you have our back?
Okay. You're alive now?
We are. We will call this session of the Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Those of you who may have been with us earlier, we went till about 11:30 and then recessed until 1:30. We have several items on the agenda, and then we will ultimately, I believe, go into a closed session. Next on the agenda was, I think, Mr. Johnston and Mr. Patterson talking about a commissioner's deed. Which one?
Property that you had to add the city on to.
Oh, that's, yeah, the Zacchaeus folks, basically it's a glitch in one of the tax deeds that needs to be corrected, and the city has agreed to do it, and just a matter of this board approving that as well. Just to make a minor revision to correct what we thought was being done initially. Zacchaeus property transfer.
Okay, on what piece of property was that?
It was a
Right.
property tax foreclosure. I think the city of Laurinburg's name was left off of it because they answered the response in it, so.
There was nothing exceptional about this, or some technical error that we needed to fix.
Correct.
It was just an oversight, and Zacchaeus is going to bear the expense since they did it.
It's just adding the city of Laurinburg's name to the deed.
To have a motion to approve
So moved.
from Mr. Ivy, a second from Commissioner McCall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Mr. Patterson, vaccine incentive program.
Okay, the program is going well. To date, we have ordered just under $90,000 worth of cards. We've been doing them in allotments, not knowing exactly how quick we've been able to do them. We did run into one bar where the bank, we took longer to get them from the bank. But that program is still going. But with that, we put two caveats on there for a December 31st and an end date, for an end date as well as funding. Right now, they're still in, I think it was $375,000 for the original funds. And right now we've used about 90 of that. So would ask if the board would want to extend the deadline of that past December 31st for the vaccinations. If the board would extend that till March.
Well, we'll have to get them used.
Yes, otherwise the program just terminates as we run out of this.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no, but you haven't used, you haven't ordered 300,000.
No,
He's
no.
ordered them in smaller batches.
Yes.
You allocated 375, but how much have we?
We've purchased 90,000, approximately 90,000.
The first time,
cards.
okay.
I think you've done them in 15,000 increments.
Yeah, $15,000 to $20,000 increments.
And we are giving them to folks who go and get their booster.
Yes,
Any vaccination.
for COVID.
Yeah, any vaccination for COVID,
Yes.
because two before
I
the
got mine.
booster.
I got a $25 gift.
And also, since now children, anyone 5 and up basically can get a vaccination. This would apply to anyone who can legally receive a vaccination. So if people are bringing in their school-age children to it, they can bring their car. They don't have to get the vaccination from the health department. After they get their vaccination, they can come bring their vaccine card to the health department, and the health department can give them the card, as long as they live in Scotland.
And they're giving that, I assume, to the parent or guardian.
Yes.
So the question before us then is whether we wish to extend this, and if so, to what
Yes.
specific date?
March is the
I would say
recommendation.
March 31st, that should give us plenty of time, and then we not need to extend additional funds.
Well, I'll make a motion that we extend to March 31st.
Second.
Have a motion and second.
You would just, it's your motion. I would maybe instead of go 3 days longer and go to the 4th of April, then that way it's our next meeting. So if we have to do it again, we won't have to have an in between.
Do it to April the 4th. That's our April meeting.
April
Mark,
meeting.
yeah, it's only like 4 days later.
it could, are you willing to accept that as an amendment to your motion?
Yes.
You accept the second. With that in mind, deadline being April 4th, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Broadband project. Mr. Patterson, or is this, who are we looking to at this point?
A little bit of everybody around the room. With this, Mark was contacted recently with, what they're looking at doing is, applying for federal funds, primarily federal funds. But they're looking at expanding, broadband service into the southeast. They're building from the coast this way. They're already active in Robeson County, and I think they're looking to expand there and come into Scotland County. With that, they are looking for a resolution, a letter of support, a resolution of support from the Board of Commissioners to go for their, to support their funding application. But with this, they've stated that they're interested in working with us to develop a digital inclusion plan. The primary draft is already in the file, it's in a Google file, which you all have access to. And with this, there would also be the recommendation that we've come up with a committee that can help look at, that is, guide broadband projects. We do have a representative from ATMC here also, if you have any specific questions. But the primary question is if the board would be willing to give them a letter of support for their, or resolution in support of their application. And then we'd look to actually begin to, we would create a broadband committee that would work with, that would be, we would seek representation from the county, the city, the school system, St. Andrews, the hospital, the primary major entities in the community, as well as we can structure that however other areas we wanted to go, but it would be looking for figuring out ways of matching up deployment possibilities for broadband.
Can you pull that map up on there, what's in our package? The one with the green, I assume is the proposed area.
Y'all mind if Chris comes up front so he can answer questions or elaborate to y'all?
Yeah,
more?
Chris, if you want to come up just to the podium and if you'll.
If it pleases the board, I'd like to kind of fill in some holes in information. Fortunately, I was able to listen to your meeting this morning from ECC and some of the things that I heard being said and what we used. First, let me introduce myself, get started. My name is Chris Ward. I'm Director of Business Development at ATMC. We're the largest telephone or communications cooperative in the state of North Carolina. As of January the 1st, we are changing our doing business name as Focused Broadband. You'll see that on the resolution, because as we grow outside of our traditional cooperative area, more people will understand and know us through our fiber optics versus our origins as a telephone membership corporation. Since 2019, ATMC has been awarded over $42,250,000 in federal and state grants to expand broadband through state and federal initiatives. ATMC is contributing, in addition to that $42 million from the state and federal government, over $21.6 million. And these grants serve Robeson County, Columbus County, Duplin County, and Brunswick County.
Is it Richmond?
No. Robeson, Columbus, Duplin, and Brunswick. Yes, ma'am. We've also won multiple federal grants to serve Pender County and Columbus County. The Pender County Reconnect, which is what we're going to talk about for Scotland today, is over $28.9 million, and the Columbus County Reconnect is a little over $16 million. We are applying for a Reconnect grant, which is through the United States Department of Agriculture, for Scotland and Robeson County. We're looking at a large area, and I brought a map inside the digital inclusion plan. It just obviously talks about Scotland, and I'll get to the importance of the digital inclusion plan in just a minute. But the Reconnect that will serve Scotland and Robeson County will serve over 1,970 addresses and it will serve over 517 route miles throughout Robinson and Scotland County. I know y'all heard some information today about how expensive it is to build fiber optics. So that's 517 miles of fiber and over 8,000 addresses in Robinson and Scotland County. If we're just going to break out Scotland County, which is why I'm here today, we're talking about 1,970 addresses and about 165 miles of fiber in Scotland County. ATMC has already done all the background work through the Lumber River Council of Government. We used their survey. We used North Carolina DIT, and the Broadband Infrastructure Office had a statewide survey. We used all that information along with our own research to identify areas that are considered underserved based on the federal Reconnect grants criteria. So what we're asking today for is the resolution to support that. We will be applying for great grants, which are through the state of North Carolina in the future, which they should open up sometime next spring. That state budget that was recently approved and signed by the governor includes over $1 billion for broadband. There's essentially enough money available at the state and federal level to fix your internet issues in Scotland County. So companies like ATMC or anybody else that's willing to put up the money to get these grants, because when I say grants, the Reconnect, 25% of the money has to come from the person that's applying for it. So it's not 100% free money. Same thing with the great grants. Some of those are a 35% mix. Some of those may be up to a 50% mix based on the new laws and the new funding. But what I'm here today is to talk about the Reconnect, which is a federal grant. And then I'll probably be back later to talk about the great grant, because that will kind of fill in all the donut holes. The map that you have in front
Is
of
it
you.
this one? This is the map you're talking about, the proposed
Yeah, for Scotland.
for Scotland and, well, it's got Robinson
And
on there too.
I've got a larger map of that if y'all want to keep that. But basically the information that was shared from the Lumber River Council of Government is the same information, and I'm colorblind. So when I look at maps, all I see is a big mass, but I can read the dots and those things. But that shows you where we came up with those 1,970 addresses. The main issue we have, just like they spoke about this morning, is the bad information from the current providers. If one house is served in a census block, they're all served. It's like the Fox Garden, the hen house. They don't want to spend money to give people high-speed internet, but they don't want anybody else to get money to give high-speed internet in those areas. So that's why it's important that you work with counties and have local surveys, because you guys through that survey have identified addresses where people say it's not available, even if CenturyLink or AT&T or somebody else said it is. So the digital inclusion plan will help us with great grants and anybody else. This is not just particular to ATMC. Any other company that applies for a great grant will get an extra point on their grant application if Scotland County has approved digital inclusion plan that's sent to the state of North Carolina Broadband Infrastructure Office. We've already had these approved with Bladen, Columbus, Pender, Hope, Robinson, working on Duplin, Onslow, and hopefully get you folks approved in the next few weeks, because we consider, or we think, the great grant application is probably going to open up after the first of the year, maybe have a 2-month window before that closes. So we're talking about a Reconnect now. This application window closes in February. The digital inclusion plan will help anybody with the great grant through the state of North Carolina, which right now it's just an estimate when that will open. We don't know for sure. So the largest amount of money will come from the Reconnect. It's a very large project. We estimate it's almost $10,400,000 in Scotland County and another 20-some thousand in Robinson County. So altogether, our Scotland and Robinson projects will be over $32.5 million from the federal government. I'm not saying we're going to win, because I can't guarantee that, but we do know everything's based on points. And so far, every grant we've ever applied for at the federal or state level, we've been awarded. There'll soon be a very large grant announced in Robinson County that we just got awarded that can't be announced formally yet until the government gets everything ready with their press release. But we're pretty good at what we do when it comes to grant applications. Obviously, Scotland County didn't get this way overnight. It'll take a long time to fix it, and it will take a lot of money. But now that the money's there, it's just companies that are willing to apply for those grants and get that money funded to fix this issue. And it's not an easy process. It requires thousands of hours of work to get this information. And you guys were ahead of the game when you contracted with the Lumber River Council of Government because most counties don't have an entity that will help them do things like that. So I commend you for doing that. And I also commend the Lumber River Council of Government for sharing that information with us because it was crucial basically to verify what we had already learned because we have been working on this since earlier this year.
Now, do we have a map that shows where those 1,900 addresses are going to be? Is that?
That's these dots.
That's the dots that you see on there. I have a larger map version of that.
Show them the map, Kevin. It's got the different colors that says.
Yeah, that's the
basically
one.
Not inside Scotland County. Inside Scotland County, but not inside.
It was
the
in
city
our-
limits.
Our packet
Down
out,
there.
that one. Yeah, there you go.
And then
By showing you guys this, anyone else that's applying for a grant can come in and steal this information. So we're taking a risk, but we have to have a resolution. So we want to make sure we're all working together because this work is taking us months to put
Oh,
together.
goodness.
that'll do it. You can just enlarge it from the bottom.
Yeah.
Move it over.
And I think the only difference in what you guys saw on the presentation this morning was if you go to the very far southwestern corner where Scotland butts up against Richmond, there's some areas over there, but that will probably be in our great grant application. There'll still be a few pockets of unserved areas that we want to cover with the remaining funds of the state. The federal government obviously has a lot more money, so you go for the larger grants with the federal government. Because with great grants, you can't get anywhere close to $32 million on a project.
So the far east and south, that is the Hasty area, which is an opportunity zone. And then the far east is the Laurinburg-Maxon Airport and goes up to almost Waverly. Then the other large area that y'all see is 15501, and it V's out. I mean, that is the highest area that you cannot have high-speed numbers that the federal government requires you have to say it's broadband. And that goes all the way up beyond Deercroft. Deercroft is that dark green at the very top of it. They cannot go in Spectrum territory areas. So that's why they're not inside the city limits, because Spectrum already has it. You cannot seek grant fundings for broadband internet if that area already has broadband internet. That's where he was talking about you get some misleading information saying that my house qualifies, so therefore my whole neighborhood qualifies. Well, that's not accurate sometimes. You do notice that it does not have the Gibson area. It does not have all of Laurel Hill, but that's where he was talking about. That would be the last mile or the next phase part of it. They will not be in competition with the city of Laurinburg with their fiber. The city of Laurinburg has no desire to provide fiber to the homes. They do provide fiber to some of the industries and of course to all the schools. But finding a company that wants to provide broadband to the home is the key to this, and a company that can come up with a match. Mark Ward had a entity company that had it. Do I have 25-30% of a $15 million fee to put towards it? That's where, and it's not just because you do a resolution saying you do this, that does not mean we go forward. We can always pull back.
No,
It doesn't cost you anything.
so that's what I wanted to know. What is the commitment?
There's no commitment from you guys other than the commitment to help us with the resolution and what we've done in other counties. I'll give Pender as an example because that's a $30 million project. Anywhere there's county-owned property to put like a switch, a 60 by 60 foot area, the county has established a partnership with us to give us easement on county property where it fits both our needs. I have no idea if any of this is going to come up, but that's really all we're asking for. There's really no skin in the game from the county. Now, the great grant opportunities, if you've got ARPA funds that you dedicated to broadband expansion, then you're eligible for even more money from the state of North Carolina. The state of North Carolina wants counties to put some skin in the game to increase the level of funding they will get. That mean you have to do it. It just means if you do have those funds available and you earmark them for broadband, when we go apply for a great grant or any other provider, they will be eligible for more funding just because the county has a mechanism to contribute. What we're doing is not new to any provider in the area. It's just those providers are probably not willing to do the work. Any company, Spectrum, AT&T, anybody that already serves here and anybody that doesn't serve in Scotland County can apply for the same grants we're applying for. The difference is when you apply for a grant and win it, you have 5 years to complete the project. And we know that we have the financial stability and the manpower and the resources to complete projects, usually on time or well ahead of time and under budget. So that's why we feel comfortable applying for such a large grant in Robinson and Scotland, because we're going to be moving west, we're going to move north, we're going to go everywhere up to the Atlantic Ocean.
Whole state, I'm serious.
No, ma'am, not the whole state. That's a little ambitious at this point, but this is a gold rush. You will never see this in any of our lifetimes. And if you got fiber in the ground, then there's no other internet service that can beat that. And we are a symmetrical provider. Our lowest speed's 250 by 250. So we don't offer, I call it broadband salad. We're 2 meg down, 3 meg up. We don't do stuff like that. Everything's symmetrical and everything is over a fiber optic connection. So there's no copper wire anywhere in our network.
Mr. Ward, if you
Why
get,
wouldn't AT&T and Spectrum be doing this?
Because they are responsible to they're responsible to their shareholders. There's no return on investment here for the next quarterly shareholder meeting. And I'm being honest.
Yeah,
I made this comment plenty of times. They're about Wall Street. We're about Main Street. We don't have to have return on our investment in 2 to 3 years. Right. We do things a whole lot different. And honestly, if they can make money, they would already been out there. That's the only reason why a service is not out there. There's not enough people per mile to make it make sense.
if you win the grants you're talking about, as I understand it, you want to provide service to the unserved areas.
Yes.
Are you obligated to provide it to all unserved areas?
No, the grant only obligates us to the areas that are specified in the grant.
Or what areas are going to be excluded in Scotland County? Then the city, the areas that are already served?
Anybody that currently already has broadband, by the definition of the FCC, and that definition is a little different at the federal level for their grants versus the state level. But anybody that already has service, when this grant is turned in, they're not eligible. Now, we will build, if you see the blue lines, and I'm assuming it's blue, that's our fiber optic network. If we build to serve these areas, we're going to have to build through some areas that already have service to get to there. That's called middle mile. And then we can extend from there after the grant's over, but we can't use federal funds or state funds to serve anybody that's considered served.
My question relates more to, say, for example, when we have our water system, you get to a point where you don't have enough users to make it worthwhile to extend the water system.
Right.
Are you obligated to extend whatever you're doing?
That's a great question. And let me tell you about a program we have, because speaking about water lines, I live in rural Columbus County and just got county water. The way we do our extensions, we serve anybody within 1,000 feet from the end of the line at no cost. And then after that, there's a certain cost that the customer has to pay or the business or whatever. But if there's a house every 1,000 feet, we could keep extending to the end of that road. But we can't go outside of that area because the grant will be audited by the USDA. So we literally have to show every address that was in the application and stop where that, because there can't be use of funds outside of that grant.
So the addresses that are included within the application are the ones that you will serve, and then beyond that is subject to whatever you.
Subject to the 1,000-foot extension and the great grant application window, because you got to realize you can't spend all this money in 1 year. The Reconnect project is, $1.2 billion over 2 years, and then the great grants is $1 billion. So that's probably going to be over multiple years in the state of North Carolina. They won't have enough people apply for money to spend all that money in 1 year. So this is going to be a multi-step process. The only reason why we're here in front of you to talk about the Reconnect is because that comes first. The digital inclusion plan is really about the great grants. That's what helps you at the state level.
How confident are you in that number of 1970 households? How was that determined?
Through GIS information and through Form 477 information, tax, land records, everything that is available in the public domain.
Not the surveys that were done because
Well, the surveys were really done to pinpoint areas that were questionable. Some areas based on 477 information from the FCC said served. If that person responded in that survey saying they live at this address, but they don't have service available, then that's where those houses were added or not added. You're saying the survey was not accurate in some cases?
It wasn't complete, yeah.
Well,
1970 are households that don't have access, because you're gonna have households that have access but have not.
Yeah.
are-
and what we mean is they don't have access to a provider that even if they don't have it, they could call up and get it. And part of that with the digital inclusion plan is not just availability, but affordability, because there's tons of federal and then there'll be some state programs. And then we offer lifeline assistance to make internet, as low as $20 a month. And people pay a lot more than that for cell phones or whatever. So if you have it out there and you build it and nobody can afford it, you might as well not have it.
Well, he made in that earlier presentation, the Form 477, and he picked on Windstream, but said that
It's
you know,
not.
they're not. So it's possible that area could be bigger if Windstream's numbers were true.
It is.
So how do you get to true?
It's very convoluted right now because the federal government is trying to replace their broadband map. That's what everybody goes back to, that Form 477 data. They're getting information directly from people's IP addresses and from people's computers when they go to certain websites to find out download and upload on particular addresses for customers. That won't happen anytime soon. The money is available now. So while we know there are problems currently, we can only go with the information we have, even if we know it's wrong. But once again, that's where the survey comes in, because where I live in Columbus County, CenturyLink said they had DSL available up to 60 meg, and that's not even a possibility unless you're right next to the central office. So we had to have people sign affidavits, and the USDA has enough employees, they call them field representatives. They can literally go to some of these houses and ask the people and get on a computer there and check it themselves. At the state level, they don't get that granular, but hopefully the information is as close to correct as we can get it at this time, knowing that there's two opposing forces here. The current service provider is going to lose customers. Even if they're providing bad service, they're still got customers. So it behooves them to keep competition out. And that's all this Form 477 map battle is over, accurate information.
So chances are that area is much larger.
It should be.
Yeah.
It will be. And a lot of that, and I don't know, looking at this map, I'm not familiar with the density of the population. Obviously, those are the more rural areas. But as you get closer to town in some places, I'm sure Spectrum or whoever may run a line down the main road, but they don't go off the side roads, and those houses are still considered served because they have service on the main road. We run into that all the time, and we try to delineate that with survey information.
Could it be a situation where you run all this out with the federal program, but then that program is complete? I'm in a neighborhood of 50 houses, 2,000 feet away.
That's when I would
Can
come
you
speak to
now
your
apply?
neighborhood of 50 people and have a meeting and ask how many people are interested in it. If we get a certain number of people willing to take service, then we would extend that at that length. 2,000 feet is really not a lot when you're looking at, 500 some miles of fiber.
But with the federal grant, you just can't go outside that grant.
No, you literally get audited. So they send people down here to check not only your books, but check your plant in the field. So you have to make it a hard stop where that line says that the grant applies.
Because I've got a question for you, I think. Yeah, I think I'm a kind of go what Attorney Johnson had asked. Yes, that is the area that Owen will apply for, but he might go right by a road that has 3 houses to the left on that road. Those 3 houses will not be served by this grant. But the state will have some finish line grants that once we have fiber there, that's when he was talking about the great grants and other grants, that they will then be able to apply for and say, okay, we put this fiber optic in Scotland County and Robinson County. We know we were not able to go to these roads because the grant would not allow us. We want to seek the state funding now to be able to run a mile of fiber for 3 houses, which costs $63,000 a mile. That's when they would apply for that. So there are going to be some residents near that fiber's going to go right by, and they're not going to get it today.
And that's an excellent point, because with the digital inclusion plan, the state will take information from the county. If Scotland County government reports these addresses are unserved, they will take that at face value. If we report it, they won't, it's not verified. So working directly with counties, if you identify those areas and you acknowledge that they're not served. That's just as good as it being on the map is not served.
Chris, you realize that you are asking us for a resolution in support of your
In
application.
support of our application, nothing else.
You realize that are likely to have other providers
Yep.
coming before us.
Yeah, they definitely will now that they've seen our map.
What other providers would they do?
I'll be honest with you. Spectrum has won a few local, like a Great Grant and stuff. A lot of them, like you heard earlier, have won RDOF funds, which that's over a 10-year period. So that's really not even realistic to talk about today. But nothing stops any of them. We've seen CenturyLink do it in some of their areas that maybe have a larger potential of customers, areas that are growing but not quite there yet. But nothing. All those Windstream, AT&T, Spectrum, CenturyLink, anybody can apply for this. But the people that report to Wall Street more than likely won't take down projects like this just because it's too big of an area and too long of a payback.
Are there any other cooperatives in North Carolina doing this?
There's quite a few cooperatives and they're mostly doing it within their service county. We're one of the few cooperatives outside of Wilkes that goes outside of our area and has expanded to multiple counties. The difference between what we're doing and what some of those cooperatives are doing, we're not asking for money. We're using our own resources. We are financially stable where if we spend $250,000 of manpower to get a grant and don't win it, while that's a bad investment for us, we know there's a return on that eventually. A lot of companies can't do this without some type of monetary assistance.
And y'all are based in Brunswick County?
Yes, ma'am. We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ocean Isle, Sunset, Leland, that area. And we are very fortunate because Brunswick is one of the fastest growing counties in North Carolina. But Columbus County right next door, we started doing them in 2011. Started moving into Robeson County last year, huge projects in Pender County. In our business, if you're not growing, you're dying. So we're growing, especially while there's money available.
I think you addressed this earlier, but I want to make sure I understand it. When we look at this map, of course, I'm like you, I don't know what I'm looking at really, but I do know that I heard you all say Laurel Hill, Gibson, those areas are not really included. But I understand you to say that when the great grants come with the state, they be included in that particular.
Yeah, what our plan is, and I don't have anything I can share with you other than what I can tell you, because once again, it's highly competitive. But this is the most bang for your buck when it comes to a federal. We've studied Scotland and Robeson County every which way from Sunday, and we feel like this is a great application because we know how many points we'll get, and we know how many points it takes to win. All grant applications are based on points. So we literally have proprietary software that runs all kinds of different formulations. Those other areas are smaller pockets. Federal government's not going to award a grant for $1 million. They won't spend as much money as quickly as possible and get a good headline. That's where the state funds come in. And I can't tell you those addresses or those townships or whatever will be served in the Great Grant. I can just tell you that with this and what we've planned for the Great Grant, it should take care of all the known underserved areas. And then the areas like we talked about where people that, extend to later, those one or two houses that are not on the main line, and those things will be on a case by case basis. But we feel very confident. Like I said, can't guarantee we'll win it, but we do feel like what we've shown you today is an excellent application.
And I ask that not just for you, but for our commissioners. I know that when we were having to do remote learning, kids up in Marston, Wagram, those were the ones who really struggled the most with not having. Miss Betty got beat up, Old 100, those folks.
And
really,
some
really struggled.
of those areas probably they're victims of that 477 map where the companies say they serve people, but they
They're
don't.
not.
And that's why it's important now to get the data out and the survey information to actually prove that those addresses aren't served.
So am I hearing that the state just supplements only after the feds have made a commitment?
No. What you're hearing me tell you is we can't apply for anything at the state level because the application's not open. The federal application window is open. The federal application limits awards maybe up to 30 million, or I don't know what that dollar amount is. It's a large amount, where the state is up to 2 million per project. So I would have to put in 15 different projects from the state, and they're only going to award 1 or 2 per county. So that would be just be a waste of our time. So the reconnect comes first just because their window's open and because they have the largest pot of funds available and can make a larger project, they can make that come to a realization. That's the only reason why we're going to reconnect for the larger area.
Are you finished in the other counties besides Robinson and Scotland?
We're not finished anywhere.
Oh, okay.
We're constantly building. When COVID hit, everybody found out if you don't have internet, you might as well not have water and lights, because you can't send a kid home with a brand new Chromebook and tell them to do their homework when they don't have internet. And technically, you shouldn't tell somebody they got to spend all day at Wi-Fi spot at a library or McDonald's to do because somebody's got to work. An 8-year-old kid is not going to sit in the car for 7 hours.
Right.
So we learned it was a very difficult process, but we did learn that broadband is essential. And for years, we've treated it that way as a company, but most people don't treat it that way because we never had a situation like that. It's an essential utility now. And what we're doing with fiber is not anything that's going to be out of style, it's not going to be a technology that dies in 50 years like copper, DSL, and then or cable service. Once you have fiber optics in the ground, you just change electronics on either end because it's speed of light. It's just laser shooting light down the line that goes to a house or a business.
So have y'all crossed the river?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I do have one. So our resolution is, you're asking us to state what?
It's in support of our project because here's what's happening. When we go to the federal government, we have to prove that people in this community think this is a good idea. Otherwise, they won't give the money. So I've got Scotland County Schools. We're hoping to get the commissioners. We've got people from St. Andrews University. We've got people from RCC. We've contacted most of the local state and federal government officials and got their letters of support. We got letters of support from the North Carolina Secretary of Commerce, North Carolina Secretary of Agriculture, North Carolina Governor, Lieutenant Governor. We've done all that work. Now we just need to get this to put in with the application because we do know applications will be better received if you've got all the local dignitaries in that.
You
I'm
already
having
have the
technical
Scotland
issues.
County resolutions in hand yet.
I have letters of support for Scotland. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Jason
ma'am.
there's one in our package. If Jason wants to read that resolution.
And I think Dr. Graham mentioned this morning.
I think Dr. Grant said, you said
So there-
you already have one from.
Yeah. They were very quick to respond because they obviously understood that there's still lots of problems with their students not having access to high-speed internet.
No, very honestly, I think that's one of our.
Biggest concern.
What about the healthcare system?
Well, fortunately, most hospitals are located in cities, so they don't have to worry about internet service. Now, there may be some rural clinics in these areas that we serve, but when you ask about the healthcare system, it's not so much the office that needs the internet, it's the customer at house that needs to send information from their pacemaker or do an online meeting with their doctor. Because most of my doctor's appointments now are through a Zoom meeting, unless they have to do blood work or stuff like that. I just have a conversation with my doctor on my computer. And that's the way this is going when it comes to healthcare, especially to keep costs down.
Scotland Healthcare will do all those. And Richmond Community College has already done those.
Yep. Yeah, we're working closely. I want to thank Mark for what he's done with us because anytime you grow into an outside area, people that's never seen us or heard of us before look at us and wonder if we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do. I provide references. The Pender County commissioners, when we met them 2 years ago, did not believe a thing we said because everybody came to them, asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars to do an application. Year and a half later, the Secretary of Agriculture is in Pender County announcing a $30 million project. So we're only here to help the County of Scotland and not really asking for anything other than your support.
So do we need somebody to read it or just make the motion to?
I think we all can read it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I offer a motion that we do this resolution in support of.
motion from Commissioner Gibson,
I
Second.
said-
second by Mr. Goldston. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. And Chris, I'm a customer of yours in Brunswick County. Y'all.
Yeah, make sure my bill down
Does
in
any-
Old and Beach don't get affected.
Does anybody need a business card? I've got a handful if you have questions or anything you want to talk about or anything.
I would
Please
like
throw
to,
it,
I'd
Jason.
like to have one just go with my
You gotta
file.
place it home.
And when we signed up for AT&T at Brunswick.
I'll just leave them right there.
You know,
I
AT&T
don't know
does
how
all
many
the
years
internet,
ago, but this
phone
was
and
the best
everything
thing
down
we've
there.
ever done. Unreal.
Where is your place?
The difference between our company and anybody
On the
else, technology is
side.
great, but it's the people you work with. If you have a problem, when you have my phone number, I actually work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and I'm making sure
Kirby
somebody
Road,
takes care of it.
Seashore.
I love.
I've been a
somebody.
Spectrum customer about all my life, Colton, where I live. I don't have a contact with them because I call a call center and it could be anywhere in the United States. So we're local people, even though we're from Brunswick, we will treat Scotland just like our customers, and we'll have stores over this way toward Robinson and Scotland County. We'll hire employees from this county. We want to do everything based out of Scotland County for Scotland County residents.
Are you in New Hanover County?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to go in closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143, 318, self-attorney employed and retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ivy,
Second.
second by Commissioner McCall. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Uh,
Any opposed say nay. Ayes have it.